My guest today has built a podcast that is ranked in the top 2.5% globally with no ad budget, no team, and no roadmap to start with. Uh, Aubrey Felderhoff is the founder of Mold Free Mum, where she helps families recover from mold illness. She built the entire business as a solo founder and mum of three, just off the back of her own 12-year health crisis. Welcome, Aubrey.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, 12 years of illness before you had answers. What were those years actually like?
They were not my favorite years, if I'm being honest. They were brutal. I was a young mom when I first got sick. I had one little boy, he was a year old, and as soon as I had my second son, things just kind of went off the rail. And at first, I thought it was just regular postpartum stuff, as many people do. And it took us 7 years to even get an answer. At that point, I'd seen over 30 doctors and gone across the country and spent so much money. And at that point, I was basically bedridden. I couldn't see, I couldn't hear very well. I couldn't drive anymore. I had lost most of my hair and my eyebrows. I wasn't able to walk. I was disabled. I had lost my job. It was pretty horrible. And after 7 years, we finally got an answer. It was toxic mold, and I thought that was the answer and that everything was going to get better. But it took me quite a few more years and another exposure in order to actually figure out how to heal from toxic mold. Hence the 12-year recovery. But we're healed
Uh,
now, thankfully. So it's been a journey.
When you first got that answer, did you feel relief or anger, or how was that after all that time?
All of the above. Toxic mold, finding out that your home is poisoning you is not necessarily an answer you want. I mean, you want an answer when you're stuck in chronic illness and you don't know what's causing all these symptoms, and you're young and you used to be vibrant and healthy, and then you just lose everything. It's pretty scary. And we had a lot of different diagnoses being tossed around. My heart had become enlarged. We had a diagnosis that I had a brain tumor that was cancerous. Luckily, it was not. They thought it was benign, and then they couldn't find a tumor. I mean, there were so many different things. And at that point, I was in late 20s and then early 30s when all of that was going on. And so, of course, I was relieved to have a name behind what was happening, but the name meant that we were either going to have to do a massive renovation or move and basically leave all of our belongings, kind of like a fire situation, and start over. And so that's a heavy diagnosis to take on, of course. And so,
Mm,
all of
that
it.
is massive. I have one question before I move on to the more business side of things.
Sure.
You talk about toxic mold. Is that toxic
Mhm.
mold as opposed to okay mold? How does somebody know?
Yeah, there's a lot of misconception out there on mold, mildew, all of the different things, and I wouldn't have known and been an expert if I hadn't lived through it. But toxic mold, so mold in itself is not toxic. It's meant to be outside as an organism that grows, right? We've all seen, I'm sure, if you go to like a pond and you see the rocks with the little fuzzy green lichens or that type of stuff, like that doesn't necessarily mean it's toxic, but it's not supposed to grow inside our homes where we live, because mold, as it grows as a defense mechanism, it produces mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are like, if you think about like a dandelion flower, a little wish flower, that the little kids pick and then they blow in the little wispy things. That's kind of mold and mycotoxins. So mold grows, and as a defense mechanism, it releases mycotoxins, which are like those little wispy things on a dandelion, but they're much smaller. They're actually smaller than like the COVID particles. So you cannot see them, you cannot smell them. They're basically like 1/100th of a human hair, if that gives you an idea. You would have no way of identifying them with an open eye, nose, anything. They're invisible. And when mold is growing inside a home or a building that's water damaged, it will release these mycotoxins as if it were out in Mother Nature in order to defend itself and its colony. It's the way that it protects itself. It's a self protective organism, except there's not other competing molds within our home. And so we as humans and animals too become the inhibitants of those mycotoxins. Those mycotoxins that were meant to kill off other species enter us, and that's actually what causes sickness in
Mm,
people that are compromised.
huge wake up call. Even where we live, we get cyclone damaged homes, and moist, and,
Yeah.
there must be a
Yes.
lot going on out there we don't see.
Oh, so
So with
much.
your podcast, you started it more as a general wellness podcast for mums, and obviously transitioned into the specific niche of the mold. Did that just happen naturally because of your situation, or was it like a business decision you made? Or
Yeah, it's a really funny story. So I started a podcast actually called Mom Intentional. So it was supposed to be a podcast to help women, specifically moms, to because of what I went through for 12 years when I have three boys now, but all three of them I had gone through my chronic illness when they were all very little. And I felt a lot of intense grief and sadness about all the time that I missed as a mom with them being the mom that I wanted to be because I really was dying. And so when I got well, all I could do was kind of lament, like, that time is gone, time is the only thing we can't get back. We can get back money, we can get back resources, but we can never get back our time, and I was so sad about it, and so I decided to start a podcast, just helping moms to be more intentional in the present moment, kind of as a way of helping myself reconcile the fact I can't get that time back, but, I can help other moms who maybe they're not in a health crisis like I was, but maybe they're going through some other grief or trauma. We all have our own baggage and things that we struggle with in life. So it started that way. And we actually had a pretty significant mold exposure in the house that we're in now. And so it shut me down. I mean, I got very sick. Again, my whole family did. We ended up having to move out of our house. We went to 7, 8 different Airbnbs for months while our home was remediated and ripped apart, and it was a whole ordeal. So I stopped doing anything. I just serviced the clients that I had, but I was really in survival, and it was through that I thought, I don't want to do anything regarding mold because it's so traumatic and painful to me. But I do want to share my story just on my podcast, just to let people know in case someone else is going through this because no one talks about it. It
mm,
kind of sounds gross, or I used to think it sounded gross, like, "Ooh, that girl has a mold, and she must be dirty," or. And so I decided I'll just do a mini series, just a little health series on what my family has been through and kind of why I went silent on the podcast. I took 2 months off because I didn't have my microphone. I mean, we moved out in a hurry and we were bouncing between Airbnbs. I couldn't exactly record and, all of the things that go into that. And when I shared, I was inundated. I mean, just
mm,
completely inundated with so I couldn't even keep up. I'm probably hundreds of messages at this point of people just in my area, not even outside of my area, who were struggling with either mold or chronic illness or a lot of the symptoms that myself or my children had. And it made me realize, oh my gosh, this is a much bigger problem than what I thought. I thought we were just severely unlucky. And in fact, there's quite a few people that are suffering and
mm,
asking questions. And so I just kind of continued talking about it on the podcast and eventually realized that I was spending all of my time helping people navigate mold. And so I started transitioning and eventually it became from Mom Intentional, Mold Free Mom. And I already had a website and a coaching business going. So I transitioned that as well. And I have basically been rehauling my program, obviously to help people, families who are suffering from chronic illness and mold. But it's been a really
mm.
good, but also kind of an organic transition.
Interesting. So organic transition, looking into the numbers, everybody running a podcast is interested in not just viewer count, but retention rates on the episodes. Obviously, you want people to listen to what's being said. How do you think that compared? Like, what did you notice in the actual nerdy numbers of the two setups that you had?
Yeah, it's so interesting, Joe. When I was transitioning, I was super worried about just obviously people that are listening to, my business was helping moms who were overwhelmed, unorganized, trying to be more intentional. That's a completely different niche than someone that is, in chronic illness, unexplained symptoms, mold. A lot of the people that are my clients now didn't know they have mold. I didn't know for so long. So I was very worried that basically everything was going to be lost. But
Mm,
what I found was it grew. I was not ready for that. I actually dropped my podcast because I could not keep up with I used to do 2 episodes a week, and after everything happened with the mold, I just decided I'm gonna go to just 1 time a week, once we moved back into the home and started to feel better. And when I switched to Mold Free Mom, I actually dropped it to just biweekly because I was so busy with, helping people more in coaching and in my program. And yet my numbers continued to grow and the amount of downloads continued to grow at a faster rate than when I was doing weekly episodes. So I was not expecting that and very shocked. But I think sometimes I've heard this many times, when you niche down even further and you're able to speak to the people, like really speak to their heart instead of in the general terms, they become your people. Like they want to hear from you and they know that you understand them and that you have the answer. And I think that's probably what helped is that the people I was talking to is not that overwhelm is general, but it's a little more of a broad topic than someone suffering from unexplained chronic illness for sure. So,
It is a really interesting, like, case study, if you like, though, because often, yes, people are told to niche down as a strategy, and they do, but you did it in such an organic way, which ties into the theme that I'm so interested in of building a business to suit who you are and just so that you can enjoy it for the long term, not building your business in a way that's like a templated guru tactic. So you did it in response to your situation. And yet it
yes.
actually did follow that powerful strategy, and that's reflected in the numbers and the number of people it's reaching. So that's really lovely to see. Um,
It is.
you've you've never run paid ads. Walk me through the three channels that built this. I suppose you've got podcast guesting using the platform Help a Reporter Out, Haro, which is really a great platform, and referral partnerships. What moved the needle first? Do you know, or do you track that sort of
Yeah.
thing?
Yes, podcast guesting was pretty helpful for me. That was a big strategy. The help a reporter out obviously was helpful. Also, I would say I don't do a ton of social media, but I picked one channel to focus on
Mhm.
and put my energy there. Where I know a lot of other people. I'm not saying one way is better than the other, but I know a lot of other people that do multiple different social media channels. I cannot keep up with that. My brain does not work that way, so I picked one and just focus there. And that was super helpful, I found. And then the other thing was doing kind of a referral networking type strategy. So finding, and it's probably easier in my industry now, helping families with mold as opposed to when I was working with moms one on one. But I find a lot of people within my network and work with them, kind of as an affiliate or a partnership. I don't wanna say affiliate because we don't give each other money, but, a qualified inspector that I really like in certain states, then I will make sure to
Mm.
send my clientele to them. And then if they have someone that is suffering from symptoms of mold, when they get an inquiry in for inspection or remediation or a mold dog, or there's a lot of different avenues, they'll send them to me. And so that's been really helpful as, kind of like a word of mouth type thing. I feel like that's always a better avenue when you have a friend that tells you, "Hey, go try this product. This is a great product." You're more likely to do that than if you just see it as an ad on, social media. Or
Mm.
I would trust my friend over just someone on social media. So it's worked really well.
That's really true. Relationships are really powerful. How do you go about the start of that referral relationship? For instance, an inspector in another state who you like when you first contact them, or how do you know that they're really good, or how do you start that conversation?
So I started with just a few people that I knew in the industry that I trusted, that I knew believed the same things as me and were in it. The mold industry can be there's kind of 2 different routes, I guess. One is like the money grab route, like the low hanging fruit where they maybe haven't been through mold toxicity themselves, but they see it as people are desperate and sick and I can make a lot of money off of it because it's
Mm.
expensive to go through
Imagine.
mold. Yes, and so I don't want to be at all in business with those people because I have been a victim of those people, and so finding the people that usually have been through mold and believe and I know I can trust, that's where I started, is just professionals that I
Mm.
knew in my area. Like, for instance, my mold inspector and mold dog that came to our house that was right in our area, I started with him like, "Hey, do you ever have people that are sick like me? Like, I'm starting this business. Can I send my people to you if, what is the radius of where you will travel?" And so we started that way. And I said, "Can I write a guest post for you on your blog? And you write one for me and we'll link our websites, and that way people that are looking more for the environmental side can then have access to you and people that are looking more for the sickness and trying to get well side will have access to me." So I just started really basic like that, and then, of course, those
Mm.
people knew people, and those people knew people, and it was, again, kind of that word of mouth and referral. I still vet them, but I would trust people that, come from personal referrals. And so I would then reach out to the people that I was referred to, set up a call, and we would do a Zoom, and I would talk face to face and get an idea of what they were looking for, what they do, what their policy is, what their ethics are behind the company, all of the above. And it just grew from there. I also
Mm.
used on, again, different social media platforms, but I like Facebook groups for this. I found some Facebook groups that have very like minded individuals in them that are all in this industry. And so it's a very small group, but we get together once a week and do a roundtable and discuss different topics. And we have different expert presenters that go on. And then at the end, we do what's called a collaborative partner. And so we are set up with different partners kind of all across the board. One week I might have a mold dog handler. One week I might have a neuroplasticity type trainer that I work with. And we just get together and set up a call and network together and find out what they do, where they serve clients, what they're looking for as far as if they want referrals, that sort of thing. So it's helped me to grow a lot in that way as well.
It's a really good use of Facebook groups, actually. I love it.
Yeah.
Very,
Yes.
very powerful. With podcast guesting, how do you choose which opportunities are going to be good? How do you decide which will be worth your time?
I try for the most part to look for things that I could see coincide somewhat with my niche. So maybe it's health podcast, maybe it's chronic illness, maybe I mean there's so much that goes into mold. Maybe it is neuroplasticity type things. I try to find like-minded niches, but also I try to keep an open mind because honestly, some of my favorite podcasts that I found and programs that I subscribe to are coaching businesses. I'm a big, lover of coaching and programs and building skills in areas that you need skills. So I've done a lot of coaching in different areas as far as hiring coaches. A lot of those people I found through, I want to say almost random podcast. So I try to be open-minded to my niche allowing me to go a lot of different ways and not just staying I hardly ever get on podcasts that are just for mold, if that
Yes.
makes
No, that's a
yeah,
really smart PR approach, just adjacent subjects that also bring out what you do and allow you to build those connections.
exactly. Yeah, kind of that
Yeah.
small fish, or is it small fish in a big pond? No, big fish in a small pond. The opposite. Big fish, small pond is where I want to be.
So obviously being a mum of 3, you're pretty busy, and recovering from mold illness, how did you decide what to keep and what to cut in your schedule and just to get done? I mean, you did say you dropped the podcast back when it got busy with coaching clients.
Yes. Yeah, that is forever, I feel like, an evolving topic for me.
Mm.
But I did do a lot of focus. I like to do planning. Quarterly, I'll sit down and have a really fun planning day with myself. I have it reoccurring in my schedule every quarter. And I will look at, okay, where am I at in my business? Where do I want to be? What are my goals for the next quarter? I always set goals for the beginning of the year. And so I'll look at, where I'm tracking as far as those yearly goals and what I might be missing, where I need to prioritize my time and where I might need to cut my time. Like what is not yielding for me. And that was, like I said, where I decided, okay, for now need to cut back on the podcast because I need to focus more on building out this program for Mold Free Mom for now. And so I reevaluate every 90 days and do a lot
Mhm.
of tweaking.
Mhm.
So it's not like I at the beginning of the year say, this is what I'm gonna do. And then I stick to it. And at the end of the year, I'm shocked that I didn't make progress in certain areas. I feel like it's so much more important to kind of have my hands dirty in everything that's going on and knowing when there's a problem. I always tell my kids, we either win or we learn. There is no losing. And so I try to keep a really open mind, about okay, like nobody took the bait or nobody listened to this or this subject is a fail. Okay, well, I didn't lose. I just learned that my audience is not looking for that and that they want more support in this area. And so I don't know. I've learned a ton just on what has worked and what has not worked. And that's kind of helped me to just continue to be open to change, which is not always easy for me every 90 days.
So you most businesses, are given the default advice to build a funnel, run ads, and then scale, and you didn't do any of that. How did you make the decision? Was it sort of a conscious decision or just did you not have that option?
I thought about running ads, but honestly, I felt like, and not to say I won't ever, but I felt like I was so busy when I switched to mold-free mom that it was clear that I was going in the right direction, organically, and I really didn't know that I could handle more, traffic. I
Mhm.
wanted to get really good at handling the traffic I was already having
Mm.
and get all my systems down because it was a new, I had just turned over to a new business and get really good at the small, single business that I was before I tried to grow. And
Mm.
so that's kind of my personality. I like to be really good at something before I expand. And
Mm.
so far it's working for me. It hasn't dried up yet and I'm getting busier. So until I need the advertisement outside of the organic, just word of mouth and what I'm doing, I'm staying right where I am and continuing to service my clients as best as I can.
It's such a wise move. I've seen many
Thank you.
businesses grow too fast and the quality just falls apart. And I'm reminded of a principle that every time you increase the business size by 3 times, everything breaks, like all of the operation systems, and people just
Yeah.
don't sort of expect that or they're not ready for it. So to do it organically and just grow with it is not a bad way to go at all. So your audience has often been sick for years with no answers. And when they're following your content, it's quite different to, say, following a fitness influencer. How does that change the way that you create content and sell? Because that could sound like a
Mhm.
dirty word to someone who's in a rough situation.
I know, and it's so hard too because at least I've been through what my audience has been through. I've been through it twice as a family, and I understand how desperate they are to get their life back and to get their health and their answers. And you're right, it's very different than the feeling of wanting six-pack abs from a fitness influencer, right? Like, both are important, but there's a difference in, that deep, deep desire and pain, the pain point. And so I try to be, very very forward on giving as much as I possibly can away for free. Like, not withholding content, not withholding some answer, that they have to work with me for. There are things that they'll need to work with me for, that are on the medical side. But as far as my content and my, um entire philosophy is just to help as many people as possible heal. And whether they pay me or not is not. I'm trying not to make that under my control because it really isn't. It's their choice, and I do
Mm,
feel like God will bring the right people to me. And until then, many people can be helped just by learning from me. And I benefited so much on my journey. I think we all do in different areas that we struggle just by people giving information. I mean, that's really why I'm here, is to help people. And so I try to focus on that and know that, in the long run, like, I'll be rewarded for my hard work.
mm. So mold is a fairly weird coaching niche to be in. If you were if
Yeah.
if somebody's listening and they think that their niche is too small or too weird, what would you say to them?
That was a big reason I didn't start in mold when I started my podcast because everyone told me, "Oh, Aubrey, you should do a podcast on health and mold." And I'm like, "No way." Like, nobody would listen to that. Who wants to listen to a podcast about mold? And so I didn't start there. And it took, I really think God gave me that second one to be like, "Hey, no, you really need to help people here." Because it took me going through it again and deciding only to share my story on my mom podcast, not, a mold podcast, to realize that in fact it's true. The more that you niche down and talk to people on that heart level, which is hard to do if I'm just generally talking, right? But if I know the
Mm,
exact words and I know exactly what they want and what they're searching for, if I'm able to talk to someone, I don't need 10 million people. I just need the people meant for me that I know I can help. Like, we don't want all the people in the world. We just want, whatever our niche is. We want the very specific people that we know that we're going to have success with and help. And I think that sometimes requires being able to talk to them and have very specific content that feels as if you're speaking to their heart because you are. And it's hard to do that, or it was for me. It was hard to do that in that general sense of just
mm.
overwhelm. And
You've
so,
articulated that so well to be able to
oh,
speak to
thank you.
people on a heart level. It's really powerful. And you're right, you don't need, hundreds of thousands of people to be paying you to be. I mean, obviously you want to help a lot of people, but as
Sure.
far as, paying your own bills, it just takes enough people that you can help, to do that side of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking to people on a heart level is just the most powerful thing when you articulate it better than they could have said themselves even is
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
they feel I mean, we all wanna know we all wanna feel seen, we all wanna feel heard and noticed and just know we're not alone. I think that's, the ultimate at least in the mold industry, I know that's the ultimate thing is that for a lot of people, I'm speaking very specific to my niche, but we get gaslit in the medical community, we're not believed. I mean, mold is often visible in both of my exposures. It wasn't visible, it wasn't growing up the walls. Both of my homes were brand new that had mold, so it's not what you would expect.
it's
And
amazing.
so, yeah. So, what I wanted most, of course, I wanted healing, but what I deeply wanted is to be heard and understood. And if you look at all of, human nature, like when you're in an argument or something, uh, yeah, we want to be right, but like at the root of it all, we want to know that the person that hurt our feelings or whatever, that they heard us and that they see us in our pain and they understand. Like that really is the root of the psychology behind it. And I don't think it's any different, on a podcast or sales or whatever. It's the same thing at the heart of it all. We want to know we're not alone. Like we're not meant to be
True.
alone. And so,
So true. I've got a few quick questions just before we wrap up. The first one is what's the worst business advice you've ever been given?
the worst business advice I've ever been given. Okay, let me think on that because obviously I probably didn't store that one in my brain. I tried to get rid of it.
Banish that business advice.
Right? I think probably one of the worst pieces of advice I've been given would be to start huge and hire everything. And I had
Mhm.
someone, and I understood he was very big picture thinking, but he from the beginning told me like, "Hey, you have to think big," and I agree, you do. You need a team, and you need like you don't need to be doing these podcasts on your own. Like you need to have an editor, and you need to have a production staff, and you need to have a social media person, and you need to. And I'm really glad I didn't go that route because it did sound easier and it sounded a lot more fun and a lot less work. But I felt it was really important to get my hands dirty in every single piece of the
It
business
is.
because one day
Yes.
I do want to grow and have a team and I can't ask them to do things that I don't understand or haven't understood and known how to do. And so I'm really thankful and I actually had some friends that started that direction and it didn't go well for them. They didn't
Mm.
know anything about the business and I'm thankful I didn't do that.
I think it brings a sense of calm. It's really wise, again, because you can't, as you say, not just ask someone to do what you won't do, but also understanding how it works so that if there's a problem, you'll have an inkling of where to look to fix that problem quickly instead of the fear of not knowing where to look or just that somebody might be taking you for a ride. So again, 10 points on that one. So as obviously, pretty busy mum and running a business, everybody talks about, their morning routine and their whatever, their biohacking or their work-life balance. What's the first thing you do every morning?
Get up and make a cup of coffee. I read my Bible. I do quiet times. I pray, journal, and then I work out and shower and get myself ready all before my kids get up. I find
Mm,
if I don't
it's
get
very
those
efficient.
yes, I have to get that in, otherwise I just feel so behind, and, the whole day to me is shot. Those are kind of my foundational needs that I need to start with,
Yeah,
self-care, time with
yeah.
Jesus, time moving my body, and then showering because I used to not get to the shower part, and then it was just awful. I just did not feel good. So
The shower part's not bad.
yeah, yeah.
I found the opposite. I need to get my work done, and then I can relax and go work out by about 3 and go, "Okay, now I can do it without stressing that I haven't got the tasks done." So
Isn't
just
it
flip
so
it around.
interesting that we're just all wired so differently, Like, I
Mm.
need the exercise to help me focus naturally because I can be a pretty squirrel brain, but I know so many others that are like, "No, no, no, I have to get my work done. That is my focus, and then I get to my exercise." Where if I don't work out first, I'm like, "Do, do, do, do." I just cannot concentrate.
What's one tool or platform that you couldn't run your business without?
Google Drive. I
Yes.
do so much on Google Drive, yeah, and it's not fancy, it's not like so many of my friends have all of these paid, things and, it works wonderful for them. But for me, again, I'm scatterbrained, and so it all needs to be in one place. And I have millions of Google Sheets that are all attached, and it's easy, and I know where everything is. I can color code. It all talks to each other. I do my meetings through Google Meet, so I love Google.
Yeah, no, Google Drive is a great workhorse, actually.
Yes.
It's very good. What's one thing that would surprise people about the mold illness space?
Mm. Well, I mean, one thing that surprised me, I didn't realize that mold is pretty prominent in new buildings. I just
Mm,
had kind of thought of mold as a medieval castle type thing, or my grandma's house, that kind of musty smell in the basement, that type of thing. But mold is actually pretty prominent. It's in, I mean, there's many statistics, but 50 to 80% of buildings are, said to have water damage and mold, so that's a pretty high percentage. Now, a lot of
very,
people
yeah.
don't know,
Mm,
so many people have other chronic illnesses or asthma or chronic allergies, or there's so many symptoms of mold, and so they may never know, because they're going after the other diagnoses and trying to treat the other diagnoses. But, yeah, I was really shocked to find how prominent mold was and how many, I mean, there's hundreds of different, illnesses and diagnoses that it's behind, so
an amazing
shocking.
statistic. 50 to 80% of buildings is phenomenal.
Yeah. I think I mean, I wish it wasn't that high, but yeah.
What's one thing you'd like people listening to the podcast to do once this podcast is over? The first thing they should be doing?
Yeah, so if you are someone that is, struggling with a chronic illness or, mystery symptoms or just something that's been nagging you a long time, I would love for you to come and listen to Mold Free Mom, my podcast, and in the show notes, I have my website linked. I have some freebies on the website and a lot of a blog and a lot of other information. But just start educating yourself on,
Mm.
even if it's not for you, mold, mycotoxins, just toxins in general in our environment. I have a lot of information that you can begin to learn from and hopefully, heal if you're not feeling very well.
Mm. Aubrey, thank you so much for coming on the Joe Show. That was really interesting.
Oh, Joe, thank you. It's been so much fun.